Hello world universe and everywhere in between, it's your friendly neighborhood miniature here, bringing you the speed paint of the thumbnail for my Gravity Rush series. This piece was completed on my trusty iPad 8 using the free software Speedpaint. It took a whopping 8 hours, not including the sketching process, which means that my over-reliance on tea is the one thing keeping me going. Luckily, taking a break and playing Gravity Rush for you was a great way to relax between processes. This piece was quite a struggle for me. Well, anything that requires any level of thought is, but in this instance, I struggled quite a bit to capture a floaty-esque feel to fit with the anti-gravity theme of the game. It kept either coming out too stiff or unnatural. After many painful hours of researching on Pinterest, trying to find the perfect reference, and binging Hermitcraft videos on the side, I finally found an annoyingly simple trick to drawing someone floating or flying. Underwater photography. Hear me out. Underwater photos almost perfectly mimic the anatomy of someone floating, which is so nifty and something I regret not finding sooner. Using unique references for obscure poses really helped me give the desired effect within the character's movement, and it really aided in avoiding the dreaded stiffness that pained me up until this point. Overcoming this challenge really made me proud of how the anatomy came out. To match the game's beautiful Victorian/steampunk style, I went with a rusty orange undertone to really bring out the warm colour palette that I planned on sticking with. It gives the piece a sunsetty feel which matches well with the game's lighting. When using an undertone, having it show through the overlapping colours is rather difficult. I tend to struggle with it. That is until I started using low opacity brushes, like watercolor ones. They're really good for blending everything together without losing the undertone I just put down. And those warm reds, purples and pinks was a great way to really push the tone that I'm going for. I loved adding the shadows to the skin. Things like that really bring the piece to life and kind of cements the figure of the piece into the overall drawing itself. And I honestly love that process when it starts to bring the piece to life. The hair, however, was a bit of a challenge as far as colouring was concerned. The overall theme I was trying to go for within the piece was drawing myself dressed as the main character of the game, which was a bit difficult to match up with the lighting. I kept almost turning my brown hair red. Can't be looking too good, am I right? I finally managed to get round to the lighting that I wanted by working in the highlights to really shine through the warm tones without taking away from the brunette colouring of my hair. Up until I actually tried drawing it, the cat was the scariest part for me going into this piece, since I've never really experimented with galaxy effects in digital art. And galaxy effects in traditional art tended to come out blotchy for me. And it honestly kind of deterred me from the piece for a little while. But guess what? After much searching and combing and experimenting, I randomly scrolled through my brushes and found a brush specifically made for stars. It was just lying there, winking at me. This is why you experiment with your drawing software. Learn from my mistakes, please. Surprise, surprise to no one, once I actually found this brush, suddenly drawing the cat was a piece of cake. I was already relatively familiar with the anatomy I wanted to go for, and so I got straight to it. Onto the game itself, if you haven't played Gravity Rush, you're missing out on a hidden gem. It was developed by SCE Japan Studio under Project Siren and published by Sony Computer Entertainment back in 2012. It was originally released on PlayStation Vita and later remastered for the PlayStation 4, which is the version I have the pleasure of playing for you. In fact, I was even surprised to find out that Gravity Rush was directed by the creator of Silent Hill and Siren, the brilliant Kiichiro Toyama. Despite the absolute struggle of holding onto my lunch while floating around the map, I fell in love with this game from the moment I picked it up from the dustiest part of my abandoned digital library. Giving the players the ability to control gravity to navigate the world is something I haven't had the pleasure of experiencing since Super Mario Galaxy, and certainly not to this almost endless extent. Playing Gravity Rush the other day really got me hyped to finally complete the game, which I hope you don't mind joining me for. The writing is as fun and as charming as the main protagonist herself. I honestly couldn't stop myself from falling in love with the character design and the character's dynamic with her cat and the world around her. Even though the game falls into the classic cliche of RPG character loses her memories, the game plays it off well enough to make her feel like a self-insert for the player instead of an idiot. She's naive, but she's not stupid, which really adds that sense of relatability to me because I'm naive to the world as well. And in all honesty, it really aids in my curiosity and eagerness to explore the world. I'm honestly really looking forward to recording more episodes and maybe even tackling some of the side quests along the way. Much like the game is, the drawing itself was a pretty new experience for me. I've never really experimented that much with drawing myself, mostly due to confidence issues. It was difficult to draw myself in such an unfamiliar way and also still reference back to the game that I'm playing. I even doubted that the drawing was going to turn out well in the first place. But I pushed through it either way, because let's be honest, you guys deserve better than just a game title for a thumbnail. And you know what? I feel amazing now that I've completed the piece. The moment that I added in the highlights for the drawing and finally completed the colouring process, it felt absolutely amazing to complete a piece that I didn't think would look good and end up loving it as much as I did. I'd like to give special thanks to all those that stuck to see the final piece. Thank you for spending your break with me, and I look forward to seeing you on your next one. Bye, dears.